in the slow breath of history. In the quiet folds of the night, when the world softens into a slower rhythm, let your mind rest upon the hush between moments. Imagine time itself as a gentle current, drifting, unhurried, carrying with it the stories of those who came before us. Not the stories of triumph or sorrow, but of small, enduring things, the warmth of a meal shared in dust and firelight, the mark of a hand etched in ink upon skin, the calm resolve of a queen beneath the open sky, the soft click of a lock closing for the very first time. These are not tales of noise or glory. They are whispers of existence, traces of humanity that linger quietly through centuries. They belong to no single era, and yet they live in all of them. In the rhythm of footsteps over dry earth, in the scent of metal and smoke, in the stillness between one breath and the next. As you listen, allow each word to fall softly, like dust settling at the end of a long day. Let your body sink deeper into calm, your thoughts loosen their edges. There is no rush here, no urgency, only the steady unfolding of time, smooth as silk in the dark. So close your eyes, breathe slowly, and drift with me through places long forgotten, where every echo of the past hums gently beneath the quiet of the present. Here we travel not to remember, but simply to rest among the stories that never truly end. Now, we begin our quiet journey through time. We will walk softly into the old saloons of the Wild West, where the air tastes of coffee and dust, and a pot of beans simmers beside the fire. We will glide through ancient lands, tracing the inked marks left upon human skin, quiet signatures of endurance. We will meet a queen whose calm strength shaped the wind of the steppe, and follow the gentle craft of locks born from a wish to feel safe and still. Each moment will flow into the next like the turning of pages, slow and unbroken. And as time stretches softly ahead, you may find yourself drifting gently into sleep. Food in the Wild West saloons. A soft warmth settles over the old saloon, where the wooden floor creaks under slow steps and the air hums with quiet calm. In this world of faded sunlight and drifting dust, meals are simple and unhurried. A pot of beans simmers by the fire, the scent of coffee mingles with smoke. Salted pork glistens on a pan, and biscuits cool on the counter, each one a small comfort after a long day's ride. The scene feels still, no voices raised, no motion rushed. Only the slow rhythm of life remains, steady and gentle, as if time itself has chosen to rest for a while in the warmth of the evening. The Western Saloon Evening Drift. The evening settles slowly over the wide and endless plains, a pale hush rolling in with the wind. It moves softly through the open doors of the saloon, carrying dust and the faint scent of dry grass. Sunlight fades through slatted windows, brushing the floorboards with gold that flickers and disappears. Outside, the horizon hums with quiet, the kind of silence that only comes after a long sunburned day. Inside, the saloon breathes in its own rhythm, slow, warm, and untroubled. The lamps, trimmed low, sway with the air, their small flames turning the room the color of amber honey. Shadows stretch along the walls, touching worn chairs and empty glasses, drifting like old memories that refuse to leave. There is no rush here, no noise that lingers, only the faint crackle of fire, the soft rustle of boots on wood, and the patient whisper of the wind outside. From the corner, the smell of beans simmering fills the air, a quiet, earthy perfume that feels like comfort. A kettle hums gently over the coals, and somewhere nearby, Coffee brews dark and slow. Its aroma weaves through the room, thick and grounding, blending with smoke and the faint sweetness of biscuit dough waiting to rise. Every sound, every scent folds into one soft harmony, a song of dust, wood, and warmth. A man leans back in his chair, the leather creaking beneath him. He lifts his cup, steam curling upward like a ribbon of breath. Someone laughs softly, then lets the sound fall back into stillness. Even the piano in the corner seems to rest tonight, its keys half lit, its last note long faded into the wooden floor. Outside, the wind sighs along the eaves. A tumbleweed crosses the path and disappears into the dimming horizon. The horses tied out front shift and settle, hooves clicking once, then stopping. Even the dust moves slowly now, suspended in the lazy amber light that lingers just before dark. The cook, silent and steady, stirs the pot again. He does not hurry. The beans turn slowly, the scent deepening with time, and the fire glows steady beneath the iron. There is peace in his rhythm, a kind of patience that feels older than the land itself. When he wipes his hands on a rag, the gesture is quiet, almost ceremonial, as though each movement matters simply because it happens at all. The room exhales with him. Warm, dim, and still it feels like a heartbeat under the wooden roof. The kind that reminds you of rest after long days, of safety found in simple things. A meal, a chair, a flicker of light. Outside, twilight finally folds across the plains, wrapping the saloon in a deeper calm. The wind slows, the lamps flicker, and the night settles in. Time drifts softer now, like smoke rising through the beams, disappearing into the dark sky above. Here, everything, sound, scent, and shadow, breathes together in silence. The west sleeps, and the saloon dreams with it. The simple feast, the food of the Western saloon. The night has begun to stretch its long fingers over the plains, touching the corners of the small saloon where warmth still lingers like breath upon glass. The doors sway gently, half open to the wind, letting in the faint scent of sagebrush and the sound of the earth settling into sleep. Inside, everything glows with a muted amber calm. The fire burns low, crackling softly. A steady heart beneath the quiet hum of the evening. In the center of the room, a pot of beans simmers over coals that glow like buried stars. The old iron pot is blackened by years of use, its handle polished smooth from countless nights just like this. Inside, the beans turn slowly, rolling through thick liquid, patient as time itself. The aroma is deep, rich and earthy, the scent of comfort and survival mingled together. These beans have no secrets. They are simple, honest, and faithful. They carry the memory of campfires and endless trails, of mornings where frost hung heavy on leather coats, and evenings when the world shrank to the space between a bowl and a spoon. Each bean swells with warmth, softening little by little until it yields completely to the slow rhythm of the flame. A wisp of smoke rises, curls, and fades into the dim rafters. Somewhere nearby, a man stirs the pot with the back of a wooden spoon. The sound is faint, a small, circular whisper. Wood against iron, grain against metal. It's a sound that belongs to the night, like the creak of saddle leather or the sigh of wind through dry grass. He tastes the broth, nods once, and leaves it to rest. The beans will wait. They always do. On the stove beside it, a slab of salted pork lies in a cast-iron pan, shimmering under a thin film of grease. The scent is sharp but sweet, a reminder of long journeys and meals made from what could be carried, not found. The fat hisses as it meets the heat, curling the edges of the meat inward until they crisp and glisten. It is a modest sound, a soft applause from the skillet greeting the quiet of the evening. Salted pork was the traveller's companion, loyal and unpretentious. Preserved with care and patience, it endured the hardships of dust, distance, and time. When fried, it turned from pale and stiff into something golden and tender, filling the saloon with its comforting smell. The taste was never refined, but it was sustaining, the kind of food that steadied a weary hand and filled the silence after a long day's ride. The cook moves slowly, his sleeves rolled, his expression unreadable beneath the low lamplight. He turns the meat, the sound of it sizzling mingling with the faint hum of the wind outside. Each movement is measured, deliberate, almost meditative. The scent of the pork drifts upward, curling around the lamps, mingling with smoke and dust. Across the room, another pot sits near the edge of the stove, larger, heavier, and older still. Inside is stew. No one asks what kind, it does not matter. The ingredients shift with the seasons, with what was hunted or found, or simply what was left. Sometimes beef, sometimes rabbit, sometimes something nameless that the night does not need to explain. The important thing is not the name, but the warmth. The stew simmers, slow and patient. The broth is thick, the color of copper and dusk. Steam drifts upward in long, lazy threads, carrying with it the faint perfume of roots and herbs. A wooden ladle rests across the rim of the pot, its handle warm to the touch. Occasionally, the cook gives it a slow stir, just enough to wake the surface, small ripples gliding outward like the memory of movement. Inside that pot, the world is reduced to simplicity, heat, patience, and hunger. Everything else waits outside the saloon door. The stew bubbles quietly, and the sound deep and round, like the voice of the earth when it exhales. The cook dips his spoon, tastes again, and smiles faintly. A rare moment of contentment that fades as quickly as it arrives. On the counter nearby sits a tray of biscuits, round and pale, resting beneath a towel to keep them warm. The smell of flour and lard drifts through the air, soft and familiar. The biscuits are imperfect, a little uneven, a little scorched on the edges, but they crumble beautifully between the fingers. When paired with beans or stew, they become something more than they are. Next to them lies a tin of hardtack, the kind of bread that does not soften with time. Each square is stiff, unyielding, and solid as stone. They are relics of endurance, food meant for travel, not pleasure. Yet here, in the glow of the saloon, even the hardtack seems gentle. Someone taps one against the table and listens to the dull sound it makes, a sound that promises reliability, if not delight. Dipped in coffee, it surrenders, softening into quiet sweetness. The soundscape of the saloon breathes with these small moments. The steady hiss of the pork, the slow bubbling of the stew, the faint crack of biscuits cooling on the tray. Now and then, the logs in the fire shift, sending up a quick spark before settling back into embered calm. Outside, the wind curls around the corners of the building, carrying faint echoes of laughter and distant hoofbeats that fade into the endless dark. The men at the table speak little, words feel too heavy for this hour. Instead, they listen to the rhythm of the night, the fire's sigh, the clink of metal spoons, the quiet rise and fall of breathing. Someone pours coffee, thick, black, and bitter, the liquid catching the lamplight as it flows into a tin cup. The scent of it wraps the room in dark warmth. The cook plates the food, his movements slow, his focus gentle. He serves beans with a slice of pork laid over top, a biscuit resting at the edge of the plate. The stew he ladles carefully, making sure each bowl is full, its surface shining beneath the soft glow of the lamps. He does not speak, and no one thanks him aloud. They simply eat, the silence between them a language older than words. As the meal continues, the fire settles lower. The room grows dimmer, softer, more dreamlike. The scents blend into one, a harmony of smoke, salt, and slow-cooked comfort. The rhythm of chewing, the small clatter of cutlery, the deep quiet of satisfaction all merge into the steady pulse of the night. Somewhere, a chair creaks, someone sighs, someone else hums a tune too faint to carry. The world outside drifts further away, until only this moment remains. A small island of warmth, surrounded by the ocean of the prairie night. The cook wipes down the counter, sets the empty pots aside, and sits for the first time. He pours himself a cup of coffee and watches the embers fade. The lamp flickers once, then steadies. The air feels thick with rest, with the slow, tender peace that follows nourishment. The beans, the pork, the stew, the biscuits. None of them remarkable alone. But together, they create a kind of quiet magic. A meal that belongs to no one and everyone. A reminder that comfort can exist even at the farthest edge of the world. Outside, the stars have gathered above the plains, sharp and silver, scattered across the black. The wind moves softer now, almost whispering. The horses stand still, their shadows long and gentle under the moonlight. Inside, the last of the plates are cleared. The men lean back in their chairs, full and silent, eyes half closed. The fire glows low, a slow heartbeat in the dark. The night hums around them, steady and kind. In this small, forgotten saloon, the simplest meal has become a lullaby. Each flavor, each sound, each breath of smoke and steam weaves into a dream of stillness. A dream that drifts, quietly, into sleep. Cowboy coffee, the quiet steam of the plains. The night deepens slowly, stretching across the plains like a blanket of indigo velvet. Inside the saloon, the last of the light flickers from a single lamp, golden and soft. The fire in the stove burns low, its glow warm against the dark wood, and in the middle of it all sits a battered tin pot. Old, dented, and shining faintly where the flame licks its side. Inside, the coffee begins to stir. The water trembles first, a ripple here, a whisper there, as if waking from a long dream. Then quietly, it begins to boil, not in haste, but in rhythm, patient and steady. Tiny bubbles bloom along the edges, rise and burst in silence. The sound is soft, like distant rain falling on dry leaves. The smell arrives before the steam, deep and dark and grounding. It fills the air, curling around the rafters, weaving through the smoke that lingers like memory. It is a scent that belongs to the West, to dawns before sunrise, to nights that never hurry to end. The kind of coffee that does not need refinement or sugar, only time. Ground beans, rough and honest, thrown straight into the pot. Water, heat, and patience do the rest. The men wait. They sit quietly, shoulders bent with weariness, their faces soft in the firelight. No one speaks. There is only the slow hiss of the pot and the sigh of the wind outside. The steam rises in slender ribbons, glowing gold in the lamplight before disappearing into the dark. They wait for it to settle, for the grounds to drift down to the bottom like sand in an hourglass. It takes minutes, maybe more, but no one counts. Out here, time bends gently, moves only when it wants to. Someone finally lifts the pot, tilts it carefully, and pours. The liquid flows thick and dark, slipping into tin cups that ring faintly against the table. The smell deepens, rich, smoky, a little bitter, like the taste of a long memory. The first sip is always too hot, the second, just right. The third, the beginning of quiet. They sit, waiting for the heat to fade. They sip, slowly. They breathe in and out again. They taste the dust, the smoke, the faint sweetness of wood. They drink in silence. The sound of their cups touching the table is rhythmic, almost musical, a soft punctuation in the hush of the room. The fire pops once, then falls still. Outside, the wind moves gently, carrying the scent of sagebrush and night. Each man feels the warmth travel through him, a calm that settles deep, spreading from chest to fingertips. The bitterness fades into smoothness, the flavor grounding, familiar. It tastes like endurance, like peace, earned after distance and dust. The coffee cools slowly, the steam fades, but the scent remains, hovering in the air, mingling with smoke and time itself. They sit longer still, not because there's anything to say, but because there's nothing left to do. They sit and wait and breathe. They sit and listen and sip. The night holds them gently, as if afraid to wake them. The fire glows faintly in its cage of iron. The world beyond the door is vast, but for now it stays outside. Inside the saloon there is only warmth and coffee and rest. They sit, waiting for the last sip to cool, their eyes half closed, their hearts half dreaming. The smell of coffee, the hum of the night, and the steady breath of tired men, all blending into one soft, endless lullaby of the West. Rare comforts, the gentle sweetness of the West. The night lies softly across the plains now, a tender hush after the long, golden hours of dust and sun. The saloon, half lit and half asleep, glows faintly like an ember that refuses to die. Inside, the last meal of the day unfolds, quiet, unhurried, and filled with small comforts that seem almost too gentle for this rugged land. Not everything served here is common. Sometimes, when fortune drifts in with the wind, there are eggs. Fragile things, smooth and pale, cradled in calloused hands as though they might break under the weight of a breath. The cook cracks them one by one, the sound sharp and satisfying against the stillness. The yolk slips out like gold melting into the pan. A faint hiss rises when it meets the grease, a sound as soft as rain meeting warm earth. The air thickens with the scent, rich, simple, and unmistakable. It carries a warmth that feels almost human, a reminder that even in this wild, untamed place, care still exists in the quiet act of cooking. The eggs bubble gently, edges curling just slightly, before the flame eases them into stillness. When they are done, their surfaces shine faintly, glazed with heat, delicate yet enduring. Nearby, a small hen roasts over the open fire. The crackle of its skin echoes faintly through the room, the sound mingling with the whisper of wood burning. It turns slowly on the spit, each rotation a patient motion, the kind that seems to count time by scent rather than seconds. The smell drifts outward, savory, warm and steady, wrapping the saloon in a halo of comfort. There is no hurry here. The cook moves with the rhythm of someone who knows that food, like rest, must be coaxed, not rushed. He turns the meat, brushes it lightly with its own juices, and lets it glisten in the amber firelight. The fat drips, hissing as it meets the coals, and for a moment the room fills with the deep, rich perfume of flame and salt. On the far counter rests a pan of cornbread. The edges are browned, the surface cracked in small, golden lines that glint like desert sand at sunset. When he cuts into it, the sound is gentle, a soft crumble beneath the knife. The inside steams faintly, warm and tender, releasing the scent of corn. sweet, dry, and nostalgic. He drizzles molasses over the top, thick and dark, moving slowly so that it flows like amber in the lamplight. It pools in the cracks and settles there, a quiet sweetness waiting to be found. Molasses is not luxury, it is memory, of harvests, of long trails, of mornings when sweetness was rare enough to taste like a miracle. When the cornbread is served, the slices are small, yet each one feels whole. The warmth seeps into the fingers of those who hold it, and the first bite carries both the earth and the fire that made it. Sometimes, when the world is kind, there is pie. The cook never says what kind. It could be apple or peach or something more modest. Perhaps raisins cooked down with sugar and hope. The crust flakes beneath the knife, soft as parchment, crisp at the edges. The filling gleams, dark and slow, oozing just slightly from the warmth. When a slice is set on a plate, it leans a little, imperfect but inviting, like everything out here that's been shaped by hand and weather. The pie is passed around the table quietly. Each man takes a forkful, slow and deliberate, tasting sweetness not as indulgence, but as peace. It is not the kind of sweetness that shouts. It hums, low and steady, lingering on the tongue like the last light fading over the horizon. Outside, the wind sighs along the wooden beams, brushing dust against the windows. The horses stamp once and fall still. The air grows cooler, heavy with the scent of smoke and sugar. Inside, the room glows steady. Soft light on metal cups, on tired hands, on faces half lost in shadow. No one speaks much during this meal. Words would feel too heavy, too sharp. Instead, there is the language of stillness, the quiet exchange of glances, the shared rhythm of breathing, the gentle clatter of a fork against tin. In the hush, the small pleasures expand, filling every corner of the space. The eggs, the chicken, the cornbread, the pie. None of them belong to luxury. They belong to survival, to endurance wrapped in warmth. Each bite is a small act of gratitude, a pause in the long march of days. The sweetness of molasses, the salt of meat, the tenderness of bread, together they whisper of balance, of simple grace found in the middle of nowhere. As the plates empty, the fire burns lower. Shadows grow long and soft, spilling across the floor like dark silk. The cook leans back, folds his arms and lets the sound of the crackling wood fill the silence. The others linger, eyes heavy, hearts quiet. The last of the pie cools untouched, steam fading into air that now smells faintly of rest. Outside, the night gathers itself again. Stars bloom above the plains, silent and endless. The world narrows to the rhythm of the wind and the steady breathing of those within. The sweetness lingers, not just on the tongue, but in the heart, a reminder that comfort can live in the smallest things. A warm plate, a quiet room, a slice of pie under the hush of an open sky. In that stillness, the west exhales, and the saloon drifts once more into the soft embrace of sleep. A quiet meal beneath the western sky. The night deepens over the plains, wrapping the earth in a soft indigo hush. The saloon stands quiet now, its doors half open to the wind that carries whispers of dust and faraway stars. Inside, the last of the fire glows beneath the stove, fading from orange to gold to the soft red of embers that refuse to die. The air is thick with the gentle perfume of smoke, coffee, and the lingering trace of a meal just finished. It is a humble meal, born not from luxury but from endurance. Beans slow-cooked through the evening, bread browned at the edges, coffee brewed until it could stand on its own. Nothing here sparkles or pretends to be more than it is. Yet within the stillness, each simple flavor seems to hum with meaning. The beans taste of patience, the bread of work and quiet reward. The coffee, dark and steady, carries the warmth of every hand that ever held a cup beside a fire. The men sit in near silence. Their shoulders are tired, their eyes half-lidded from the long day behind them. Around them, the saloon breathes. Wood creaking softly, the fire sighing, a chair shifting as someone leans back in thought. Outside, the night wind hums low, brushing against the wooden walls like the sea against the hull of an old ship. It is a world of quiet survival, of dust, sweat, and the small comforts that make living a little softer. These men have no riches, no grand stories to tell, only the steady rhythm of days that pass and return, and the knowledge that at the end of each one there will be warmth, a seat, and something to eat. The cook moves slowly, gathering the last of the dishes. He wipes the counter with a worn cloth, his movements patient, almost ceremonial. He has done this countless times before, and he will do it again tomorrow. In his quiet ritual, there is peace, a sense that even the smallest act can hold grace when done without haste. The lamplight flickers gently, painting the room in shades of amber and shadow. The glow touches the tin cups and plates, the edges of boots lined up near the door, the grain of the wood polished smooth by years of hands and stories. The whole saloon feels alive in its stillness, breathing softly with the rhythm of rest. One man pours himself a final cup of coffee, though the pot has grown thick and dark at the bottom. The liquid falls slowly, heavy with grounds, but he doesn't mind. He lifts it carefully, lets the steam brush his face. The scent fills the space between him and the fire, a low, earthy sweetness that settles like a lullaby. He drinks without hurry. Each sip feels like a heartbeat, slow and grounding. Around him, the others have fallen silent completely, their eyes following the dance of the flame. Someone leans forward, elbows on knees, head bowed as though in prayer, though no words are spoken. Another hums faintly, not a song, but a sound that drifts in and out of the stillness like wind through long grass. The meal is done, yet its warmth lingers. It sits quietly in their bones, the soft fullness of beans, the tender crumb of bread, the salt of meat, the hint of molasses that sweetened the edges of their hunger. These things so small and ordinary have become precious. Out here, far from comfort, survival itself becomes a kind of grace. The saloon holds this peace like a secret. Beyond its walls, the prairie stretches wide and wild, its vastness filled with silence and stars. Coyotes call faintly in the distance, their voices echoing across miles of open land. The sky above is endless, a deep river of darkness glittering with light so distant it feels like memory. But inside, under the sway of the lamp and the soft hum of coals, everything narrows to one tender truth. They have made it through another day. No one names that feeling, yet it fills the room. The quiet joy of survival, the soft comfort of being together in the warmth, away from the wind. There is no need for conversation. The stillness says everything. A chair creaks, a sigh escapes, and the fire answers with a quiet pop. The night stretches its arms around them, a patient, endless embrace. The cook sits at last, lowering himself onto the stool nearest the fire. His hands rest on his knees. He does not eat nor drink, but simply watches the glow of the embers as they pulse, fading and flaring like the slow beat of a heart. He has seen nights like this countless times, and still, each one feels like the first breath after a storm. The saloon grows darker now, the lamp trembles, its flames smaller, its light softer. The smell of smoke thickens, settling low, blending with the scent of coffee and warm wood. Each breath tastes of earth and ash and rest. Outside, the stars move imperceptibly across the sky. The horizon disappears, leaving only shadow and silence. Inside, the men drift closer to sleep, eyes closed, bodies heavy, minds quiet. The last words of the day dissolve into nothing, replaced by the quiet hum of peace. Perhaps this is what home feels like, even for those who have none. The brief stillness between the long miles, the warmth that asks for nothing, the knowledge that for this one night the world is kind. The cook glances toward the window. The wind outside has softened, the dust has settled. Somewhere in the distance the prairie sighs, a sound so faint it could be mistaken for breath. He smiles faintly and lets his eyes close for a moment, listening to the stillness that fills the space between every sound. The night will pass. The fire will fade. Morning will come, and the day will demand its strength again. But for now there is only this. The quiet pulse of life that beats beneath fatigue, the calm that lingers in the wake of hunger, satisfied. And so in the final hush, the world seems to pause. Between wind and dust, they sit and eat. Slow, unhurried, content. A piece of bread, a cup of coffee, and a quiet night upon the open plain. The journey of tattoos. Ink drifts like memory upon skin, soft, deliberate, eternal. Each mark tells a quiet story, carried through generations of wind and dust. The needle moves slowly, humming low, like a wave against the shore. In the silence, time folds back upon itself. Every line breathes with warmth. These tattoos are not shouts, but whispers, symbols of belonging, of endurance. They live beneath the surface, fading gently with the years, yet never gone. The body becomes a map, and every mark, a heartbeat remembered. The ancient ink whispers beneath the skin. Before there were stories written on paper, before the words found voices or books found bindings, there were marks. Quiet, deliberate, and permanent. They lived on skin. They moved with breath, with heartbeat, with time. They were tattoos, though the people who bore them never called them that. To them, they were memory, and perhaps something softer still. The oldest traces lie hidden in the cold silence of time, beneath layers of ice, in the dust of forgotten tombs, in the faint curve of mummified arms. The ink remains, faint but certain, darker than the centuries that tried to erase it. Small lines, simple dots, winding shapes that once meant something to someone. And though the meaning fades, the feeling remains, like smoke long after the fire has gone out. Imagine a world without sound but full of rhythm. A world where wind sang across mountains and the sea hummed against the shore. In that world, someone once bent close over another's skin, holding a shard of bone or wood, dipping it in soot and ash and pressing it gently into flesh. Not cruelly, not hurriedly, but as one might touch the earth before planting a seed. The ink seeped in, slow and sure. It met the pulse beneath the surface, and together they began to move, life carrying art, art becoming life. There was no ceremony beyond the quiet of the act itself. Only the sound of breath, the faint scratch of bone, and the soft, steady heartbeat beneath the hand. Those who bore the marks wore them like still music, notes that no one else could hear, but that the body remembered. The tattoos told of journeys of love, of pain, of belonging. They spoke not in words, but in silence. Each line carried intention, though none of it was ever explained. The ink was made from the earth, charcoal ground fine, ash from old fires, sometimes soot mixed with oil or sap. The tools were crude yet precise in their simplicity. And the designs, they were never elaborate. Just lines and dots, sometimes crossing paths, sometimes standing alone. It is easy to see them now as decoration, but back then they were more like breath captured in form. On the arms of ancient hunters, you might find small clusters of dots, guides perhaps to remember strength. On the faces of the lost islanders, curved lines followed the bones beneath, shadows that shaped the self. In the north, the marks lay hidden beneath furs, unseen except in death. In the south, they shone beneath the sun, each stroke gleaming like a song caught in the skin. The world was different then, yet the need was the same. To be remembered, to belong, to touch something lasting. A mark on the body was a promise that even when the voice was gone, something of the person would remain. The ink would carry them forward through years, through generations, through silence. In the cool dark of time, those marks still rest. The skin that bore them has long turned to dust, yet the pigment lingers as if refusing to fade. Archaeologists find them, measure them, name them, but names do little. The real truth of those tattoos lies not in science, but in the whisper of what they once meant. A whisper too soft for words. The light of a small fire might have once revealed them, glinting faintly as someone moved their hands. Perhaps they were shown only to the trusted, or perhaps they were never hidden at all. Maybe a mother pressed her fingers to them as her child slept. Maybe a warrior traced them before battle. Maybe they meant nothing and everything. There is something timeless in the way the ink meets the skin, something that feels older than speech, deeper than thought. The act of marking is both gentle and unrelenting, a quiet agreement between flesh and memory. The mark does not shout, it waits, it stays, and through the long corridors of history, the same idea drifts like mist, that our stories are not only told, they are carried in bone, in scar, in ink. The human desire to leave a trace, to reach across time, is as old as fire and sleep. Imagine now those small black dots beneath ancient skin, each one placed with care, each one glowing faintly under the years. They do not move, yet they breathe. They do not speak, yet they tell everything. They are the faint fingerprints of thought upon the body, of meaning without sound. The world turns, centuries fall away, and still they remain. Tiny, patient, eternal. They outlast the names, the empires, the languages. They lie beneath the surface, untouched by the noise of history, like stars beneath a thin veil of cloud. In them there is peace, not the peace of forgetting, but of being quietly known. And so when we look at them now, under the soft light of study, through glass and careful gloves, we are not only seeing the past, we are hearing it breathe. We are hearing that same rhythm, the one that began with heartbeat, ink, and touch. Those small marks, those gentle lines, they remind us that even in silence, life insists on leaving traces, and somewhere in the depths of the centuries, beneath skin that once was warm, the old ink lies still, whispering its story to the dark. Tiny marks, faint shadows, resting beneath the skin of those long gone, as if they still wish to tell us something, by saying nothing at all. The silent script, tattoos across ancient worlds. Time drifts softly, like dust settling on forgotten stone. In that long hush between centuries, the story of the tattoo continues, quiet, steady, unbroken. It crosses deserts, sails over oceans, climbs mountains, and finds its way into the skin of humankind wherever it goes. The ink changes, the hands that hold the tools change, but the meaning, the need to mark, to remember, to belong, remains. In one corner of the world, where the air smells of salt and seaweed, the ink takes the shape of waves and wind. Fishermen return from the ocean, skins sunburned and salt-stung, the marks on their arms glinting faintly in the fading light. The tattoos there are simple. Lines that curve like the sea's edge, symbols that mimic the rhythm of tides. When they touch their own arms, they feel more than the skin. They feel the sea itself, alive beneath their fingers. The ink is not ornament, but company. It stays when the horizon stretches too wide, when the waves swallow the day, when the world feels far too vast to belong to one heart alone. Far inland, in places where the wind hums low through tall grass and the earth smells of heat, the ink moves differently. It follows the muscles, along the curve of the shoulder, across the ridge of the back, as if drawn by the very movement of life. Here, tattoos speak softly of passage and endurance. Some are given at the end of journeys, others at their beginning. A mark to say, you have walked this road, you are part of the land now. The designs are made of fine dots, like grains of sand that refused to be forgotten. In the ancient cities where stone walls rise against the sky, the ink becomes more deliberate. The artisans there think of symmetry, of beauty, of balance. Their tattoos form delicate chains across the wrists, spirals that follow the lines of veins. They are worn not as protection, not as proof, but as grace, quiet evidence of taste and craft. When sunlight catches the skin, the lines seem to shimmer, as though the body itself had learned how to hold light. These marks are not loud, they do not demand attention. They rest upon the skin as gently as silk rests upon wind. In colder lands, where the days are short and the air smells faintly of snow, tattoos lie hidden beneath layers of fur and cloth. They are carved in quiet secrecy, not for display, but for remembrance. Thin black lines trace the wrists, the collarbone, the spine, a language of touch more than sight. When the long winters come, when the sun disappears behind clouds for months, these marks remain a private warmth, pressed close to the heart. Sometimes in the dim glow of firelight, one might glimpse them, dark against pale skin, flickering like embers beneath frost. Across the oceans, on islands small and green, the ink takes a new rhythm. The skin becomes a canvas of stories, each pattern alive with movement. The hands that create them work with patience, tapping, 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 a steady percussion like rain upon wood. The sound itself becomes part of the ritual, a heartbeat shared between artist and bearer. The finished tattoos are bold and flowing, full of arcs and shadows, curving around limbs as if the body were carved from water. When they move, the designs shift and shimmer, and it feels as though time itself bends to their grace. Each culture, each land, breathes through its ink, not as decoration, but as expression. A tattoo is a language without words, a gesture that lives forever in silence. It can speak of rank, of journey, of belonging, or simply of beauty. The meanings change, the symbols fade, but the act, the moment the needle meets the skin, remains the same. It is the meeting of endurance and creation, pain and stillness, art and life. In the heat of a desert, the tattoo might have been drawn to mark survival, the crossing of a vast, merciless plain. In a mountain village, it might have meant home, or family, or lineage. Along a riverbank, it might have been nothing more than a memory of water, etched for the love of its movement. None of it needs to be explained. The mark itself is enough. There is beauty in that silence, the way the ink says everything without a single word. You can imagine it now, a hand resting on another's arm, tracing the faint lines that tell of something long gone, yet still alive. The marks are not loud, not proud. They are soft, deliberate, certain. They belong to the body the way a shadow belongs to light. Inseparable, but never the same. Sometimes a tattoo was given to honor strength, to tell the story of someone who had endured what others could not. A hunter returning from the plains, a woman who had crossed storms, a craftsman who had worked years to master his art. Each one carried their history beneath their skin. The ink was not reward nor vanity, it was a quiet recognition. The world did not need to see it. The body knew. Other times it was simply beauty. The curve of a line following a shoulder, the shimmer of dark ink against bronze skin, the soft contrast of texture and tone. It was the pleasure of form, of art made living. To tattoo was to touch time, to make something that would change as the body changed, to let art breathe and age. The hands that worked the ink often bore their own. Their tools were worn smooth, their movements calm and sure. Each mark required patience. The needle pressed down, lifted, pressed again. Sometimes it was bone, sometimes it was metal. Sometimes the pigment was made of soot and oil, other times of crushed minerals or ash. The process was the same everywhere. Slow, rhythmic, unhurried. And the result, always, was quiet magic. You could walk through any age, any land, and find someone marked, not as a warrior, not as a mystic, but as a human who wanted to be seen by time itself. These tattoos were not loud declarations, they were whispers, whispers that said, "I was here, I lived, I left a trace." In every culture, the skin became a page, and ink became its handwriting. The body carried stories long after voices fell silent. When two marked people met, they might trace each other's lines, finding familiarity in pattern and curve. No translation was needed, the ink spoke for itself. Through the slow turning of centuries, the meanings shifted, faded, and returned again. Styles changed, tools evolved, but the essence stayed. The stillness between touch and memory. The mark that endures. Today, when we look back at these ancient tattoos, the spirals, the dots, the waves, the lines, we see not just decoration, but connection. Between person and person, between body and time. The ink remains, faint yet unyielding, even when everything else has gone. Beneath all language, all history, all motion, the human desire to leave a mark hums on. Soft, endless, steady. In every age, in every place, the act is the same. A breath, a pause, a meeting of skin and intention. The needle presses, the pigment enters, the skin accepts, and time, once more, begins to remember. The ink of the voyage, marks of the endless sea. The sea has always whispered to those who listen, a slow, rhythmic calling that stirs both longing and loneliness. Beneath its endless blue, stories drift like shadows, unmoored yet unforgotten. And among those who once followed its voice, the sailors, the wanderers, the dreamers, the stories took shape not in words, but in ink. They were men who spent years between horizons, their lives drawn in tides and wind. The deck beneath their boots creaked with salt and age, and the stars above became their only constant map. They carried little with them, a small chest, a knife, a rope, a dream. Yet upon their skin they carried the world. Each tattoo was a voyage remembered, a promise made, or a place that had refused to let go. The ink became their diary, one that could not be lost to the sea. On the forearm, a compass, its points steady even when the waves were not. On the shoulder, the outline of a ship, sails stretched wide, forever caught in a wind that no longer blew. On the chest, a heart pierced by an anchor, symbol of steadiness in a life that knew only motion. When the days at sea grew long, when the world narrowed to nothing but sky and water, the men would gather on the deck and speak softly of the places they had been. The tattooed lines upon their arms gleamed faintly under the lantern light. Each mark held a story, of storms endured, of ports remembered, of faces left behind. Sometimes the ink was made there on the ship itself. A needle sharpened, soot from the lamp mixed with water, and a steady hand guided by memory. The process was slow, unhurried, and silent, except for the creak of wood and the low hum of waves. Pain was expected, even welcomed, for every sting of the needle was a reminder that they were alive, that they had been somewhere, that the sea had not taken everything from them. The ocean, vast and untamed, gave them solitude, but also the ache of forgetting. To carve a memory into the skin was to keep something human, something still. The ink held the warmth of land, of laughter, of sunlight on stone streets far away. In that sense, every tattoo was a small rebellion against the endlessness of the sea. Some bore the names of distant harbors written in uneven letters. Others bore the shape of birds, their wings spread as if caught in flight, a promise to return home, though many never did. There were serpents coiled around wrists, stars etched along collarbones, and lines that curved like the motion of waves. The skin became a map, not of geography but of memory. When storms came, as they always did, and the ship groaned beneath the fury of wind, the tattoos seemed to move with life. The ink, dark and glistening under rain, clung to the skin like prayer. And when the sea claimed one of its own, those who remained looked at the marks left behind on their own bodies, reminders that they too would one day be stories told by the tide. In the quiet after the storm, when the waves settled into long silver lines, they would stand at the rail and look outward. The horizon was always the same, and yet never was. And they would trace their tattoos with salt-stained fingers, feeling each line like a heartbeat. Each tattoo was a journey, a road traveled, a memory carried through salt and wind. No one spoke of them as art. They were not for beauty, though beauty lived in them. They were not for others to see, though others always looked. They were small anchors of identity, pressed into flesh by choice, by will, by longing. When the ships docked at last, when boots met solid ground, strangers could tell a sailor's story before he spoke a word. The ink spoke first, of oceans crossed, of stars followed, of love found and lost between waves. And in the dim taverns where they gathered after months at sea, the tattoos would gleam once more in the firelight, black and soft, like shadows telling secrets. For in the end, the ink was not only a record, it was belonging. It was proof that they had wandered far and still returned. Every tattoo was a voyage, a path, a land, a memory carried upon the tide. The modern ink, the whisper of the self. The world has changed. Cities rise where once the earth lay quiet, and glass towers stretch into the sky like fingers reaching for light. The hum of life moves faster now, voices overlapping, footsteps echoing through streets that never sleep. And yet, somewhere beneath all that noise, the ancient rhythm still beats. The rhythm of ink and skin, the gentle act of marking time upon the body. In this age of light and motion, tattoos have found new forms. Brighter, bolder, more intricate than ever before, they are no longer hidden beneath layers of cloth or secrecy. They bloom openly now across shoulders and wrists, along spines and ribs, over hearts and hands. The body has become a gallery, personal, intimate, alive. Each tattoo tells a story, but not always one that asks to be read. Some are quiet, some are loud. Some whisper of loss, others of joy. Some exist simply because the shape of them feels right against the skin, like a note that completes a melody. There is no single reason anymore, no single purpose. The ink has become language, fluid, infinite, deeply human. The artist's hands move slowly, deliberately. The machine hums in soft rhythm, like the murmur of bees under sunlight. The needle glides across the surface, its sound steady and tender. A faint sting, a small bloom of color. The skin reacts, breathes, and accepts. It is a dance, one of trust and patience, of creation and surrender. Outside the studio, the city moves quickly, but inside, time slows. Every line takes focus, every shade a moment of stillness. The hum of the needle, the faint scent of ink, the low breath of concentration, all weave together into something meditative. The pain fades into calm, into awareness. The body becomes both canvas and witness. Some come seeking meaning, a name, a date, a word that holds weight. Others come for beauty, for symmetry, for the soft shimmer of color against skin. Some mark beginnings, a birth, a change, a decision. Others mark endings, the closing of one chapter, the quiet acceptance of another. In each case, the tattoo is not just a symbol, but a pause in the rush of life, a moment of reflection carved into permanence. Modern tattoos are art, but not only art. They are conversation, and between body and soul, between what is seen and what is felt. They let the unseen speak softly through color and line. A single image can hold an entire world. A single curve can carry a lifetime of thought. The designs themselves have become as varied as dreams. Watercolor blooms that fade into skin like mist. Blackwork patterns as bold as shadow. Fine lines that trace constellations, vines and whispers of memory. Some resemble maps, others resemble music. All of them, in their quiet way, say the same thing. I was here. I am alive. For many, tattoos have become a way to reclaim the body, to turn it into a language that belongs only to the self. The marks remind them that they exist not as blank pages, but as stories in progress, each line a sentence, each image a chapter. The ink flows not to hide, but to reveal, to make visible the parts of us that cannot be spoken aloud. When people meet now, they often notice the tattoos first. A glimpse of color at the edge of a sleeve, a delicate mark on the wrist, pulsing faintly with each heartbeat. Sometimes they ask, what does it mean? And sometimes the answer is simple, nothing. It just feels right, because in truth, not all marks need reasons. Some simply are. Like clouds drifting across sky or ripples across water, they exist for beauty alone. The ink, after all, does not need permission to belong. As styles evolve, so do the stories. The same designs that once spoke of rank or journey now speak of freedom and individuality. The tools have changed, steel and motor instead of bone and ash. But the intimacy remains the same. The artist's touch, the pulse beneath the skin, the trust that passes between them. It is the same quiet bond that has existed for thousands of years. And though the art now glows beneath neon lights instead of torchlight, though it hums to the rhythm of machines instead of fire, the essence is unchanged. It is still a conversation between permanence and impermanence, between what fades and what endures. Some tattoos stretch across the whole body, an ocean of color and pattern. Others are small, a single dot, a word, a breath. Yet all of them hold the same truth. They are choices made visible, acts of remembrance, of expression, of defiance, of peace. There is beauty in that. in knowing that something so ancient can still evolve, still speak in new tongues, still mirror the pulse of the present moment. Each generation takes the ink and reshapes it, carries it forward, not to erase the past, but to fold it gently into the now. Late at night, when the city quiets and light spills in thin lines through the blinds, someone lies awake and traces their tattoo with tired fingers. The skin is warm beneath the touch. The ink feels alive, almost breathing. It is more than an image now. It is memory, identity, time itself, resting just beneath the surface. They close their eyes, and for a moment, the world slows again. The sound of the machine fades, the scent of ink lingers faintly in the air. And in that stillness, they understand. This mark is not decoration. It is connection, a thread between who they were, who they are, and who they might become. Outside, the wind moves softly between the buildings, carrying the hum of the city into distance. The night folds around it all, gentle and endless. And somewhere in the quiet, the ink glows faintly beneath the skin. A small, steady whisper, reminding them of what has always been true. Though the years may pass, though the world may change, the tattoo remains what it has always been. The whisper of a human being to themselves. Tomyris, the queen of the endless steppe. The wind moved softly across the vast steppe, a low, endless breath that carried the scent of grass and sun. From horizon to horizon, the land stretched in gentle waves, gold and green by day, silver and blue by night. There were no walls here, no borders, only the rhythm of the earth and the whisper of the wind. The grass bent and swayed, moving as one body beneath the sky's wide silence. It was in this open world that Tomyris lived, a woman of calm strength, born beneath the same boundless sky she would one day rule. Her home was not built of stone, but of air and motion. The wind was her constant companion, and the plains her quiet throne. She walked among her people as one of them, her shadow long in the afternoon light, her gaze steady as the horizon itself. To those who saw her, she seemed carved from the same earth she defended. Steady, patient, enduring. She did not need crowns or marble halls. Her crown was the sun rising behind her shoulders, her court the rustling fields that stretched in every direction. When she spoke, her voice carried like wind over water, gentle but certain, with a calmness that settled those who heard it. The land was alive around her. Horses ran free, their hooves drumming softly against the soil. Rivers wound their way through the plains, gleaming like threads of glass. The air was filled with the hum of distance, the sound of grass brushing against itself, of time flowing unseen. In that vastness, Tomyris felt no loneliness. The earth and sky were her kin, the shifting horizon her companion. Her leadership was not a weight, but a rhythm. She listened more than she commanded. She rode through the mornings with quiet purpose, the wind tugging gently at her cloak. The steppe was wide and wild, yet it seemed to know her, to bend just slightly under her presence. Her strength did not come from conquest or fear, but from stillness, from the calm certainty that grows only in those who belong wholly to the land they stand upon. When night fell and the stars gathered like silver dust across the dark, she would sit by the fire and watch the flames curl upward into the sky. Around her, the plains stretched into forever, quiet, vast, and full of breath. The wind moved through the grass like a whisper, carrying stories too soft for words. And there, in the heart of that endless world, Tomyris remained, steady as stone, gentle as dusk, and eternal as the steppe itself. The quiet before the storm, Tomyris, and the waiting plains. Dawn came slowly to the steppe, spilling light over the horizon like water over stone. The grass glistened faintly with dew, bending beneath the touch of morning wind. The air was cool, calm, almost tender, the kind of quiet that feels deeper than silence, as if the world itself were holding its breath. The camp lay beneath that endless sky, a scattering of tents and flickering embers, still warm from the night. Horses shifted softly in the distance, their breath rising in thin plumes. Men moved without words, their motions careful and measured. There was no sound of laughter, no clatter of metal, only the muted rustle of leather and the whisper of cloth in the breeze. Tomyris stood apart, where the plains opened wide and the horizon met her gaze like an old friend. Her cloak brushed the grass, heavy with dew, and her hair moved with the wind. Strands of darkness against the pale light of dawn. The sun had not yet risen fully, and in that dim space between night and day, she seemed both present and eternal, as though she had stepped from the earth itself. The day before battle is not loud. It is not filled with the heat of courage or the cry of defiance. It is filled with stillness, the kind that gathers in the bones and waits. Tomyris knew it well. She did not pace or pray or raise her voice. Instead, she listened to the wind sweeping through the grass, to the faint murmur of her people waking, to the steady rhythm of her own breath. Around her, preparations moved like a tide. Weapons were checked, horses saddled, water shared in silence. The sound of sharpening blades carried softly, rhythmic and patient, like the beat of distant rain. The scent of smoke lingered from the night's fire, curling upward, vanishing into the growing light. The plains stretched out in every direction, unending and bare. No mountains marked the horizon, no forests softened the view. Only distance, shimmering, golden and unbroken. It was a land that demanded calm, that gave nothing but its quiet, and expected nothing in return. Tomyris had grown from this earth. It had shaped her silence, her certainty, her strength. She watched as the first rays of sun began to rise, slow and deliberate, turning the dew into 1,000 sparks. The air grew warmer, tinted with gold. Every blade of grass seemed to stand straighter, glowing faintly as if lit from within. In that light, the world looked almost new again, untouched, unscarred, waiting. A few of her captains approached, their faces calm but eyes heavy with thought. They spoke in low tones, exchanging words that fell softly and dissolved into air. She answered with a nod, a few quiet sentences, nothing more. There was no need for speeches. They all knew what the day would bring. They had seen it before, felt it in the bones of the land, the slow gathering of something vast and inevitable. Beyond the ridge, the opposing camp slept beneath the same sky, unaware or pretending not to be. Between them lay the plains, wide, silent, and ancient. The wind passed over it freely, carrying no sound of fear or anger, only the steady breath of the earth turning beneath the sun. Tomyris walked a little farther from the camp, her steps leaving soft impressions in the grass that would soon rise again. She stopped near a small rise where she could see the entire expanse, the horizon burning faintly with the day's first fire. For a moment, she closed her eyes. The wind touched her face, cool and alive. In that instant, there was no war, no command, no burden, only the heartbeat of the plains, steady and eternal beneath her feet. A lark rose suddenly from the grass, its wings catching light as it spiraled upward. She followed its flight with her eyes until it vanished into the sun. The sound of its cry hung in the air for a long moment, then disappeared, leaving silence once more. It was then she smiled, a small, private curve of peace. She returned to her people as the light grew stronger. The camp had awakened fully now, movement flowing like slow water. Yet still there was no noise of haste. Even in their purpose, they moved with care, as though not to disturb the calm of the morning. The horses stamped gently, their breath warm against the rising day. The smell of dust and leather mingled with the faint sweetness of grass. Time passed quietly. The sun rose higher, burning away the mist, revealing the plains in their full immensity. Shadows stretched long and thin across the ground, then folded back into themselves. The moment before everything began, before sound, before motion, before history, stretched on and on, soft as breath. Tamiris stood once more at the edge of the camp. Her hands were steady, her eyes bright with the light of the steppe. Around her the grass moved like an ocean, waves upon waves of gold. The wind carried her cloak outward, made her seem almost part of the land itself, unyielding, infinite. She said nothing. She did not need to. The silence between her and her people spoke all that words could not. The steppe listened, vast and unbroken. And when the time came, when the sun climbed to its height and the air trembled faintly with heat, the calm did not leave her. It settled deeper instead, wrapping around her like a second skin. For that is how the plains teach their children, not to shout against the wind, but to move with it. Not to fear the storm, but to stand still within it. People would speak of that day long after. They would tell of banners rising like flame, of earth trembling beneath countless feet, of voices lost to the horizon. But what they would remember most was the quiet before, the golden light, the calm breath, the figure standing alone beneath the sky. And they would say, after it was done, when the sun had set and the shadows returned, the land grew silent again. The wind passed softly through the grass, and the plains, vast and patient, lay as they had always been, still, endless, and unchanged. They say that after all the earth forgot the noise. Only the wind remained, moving through the fields as though nothing had ever happened. Epilogue: The calm beyond the storm. The steppe still breathes beneath the same wide sky, its grasses bending gently under the whisper of time. The wind that once carried the sound of horses now moves quietly, soft and eternal, tracing invisible paths across the plains. In that silence, her name remains Tamiris, spoken not in triumph, but in reverence. She is remembered not for conquest nor for glory, but for the calm that lived within her. In a world of motion and dust, she stood as still as the horizon, unshaken, unafraid. Her strength was not thunder, it was the quiet persistence of the earth after rain. Her courage did not burn. It endured, like light caught beneath the clouds. Generations have passed, yet her presence lingers, woven into the wind, folded into the song of the grass. She belongs not to history, but to the land itself, the endless, breathing steppe that shaped her. And so they say, her name is still spoken softly beneath the dawn. Not because she conquered, but because she remained steady, gentle, and whole, the stillness at the heart of every storm. The origin of locks, the dream of safety. Before cities had walls and gates, before iron met fire and became key, there was only a door, and the wish to keep it closed. From that wish, the story of safety began. This chapter drifts through time with the calm rhythm of thought, from wooden bars in ancient huts to delicate brass locks shaped like animals, from the hands of Egyptian craftsmen to the inventors of Rome, China, and India. Each culture, in its own quiet way, sought the same thing: peace in stillness, rest behind a closed door. Here, the air feels thoughtful, serene. Every sound, the click of a latch, the whisper of turning metal, becomes a heartbeat of trust. And when it ends, the world feels lighter, as if finally allowed to sleep. It began long ago when the world was still soft with wonder. In the quiet dawn of civilization, when men and women first gathered beneath roofs of woven reed and sun-baked clay, there was a moment of pause, a thought gentle and small, yet filled with promise. They looked upon what was theirs, food, tools, memory, and wished to keep it safe. Not from greed or malice, but from the slow wind, from chance, from the unknown beyond the door. A hand reached out, closing a wooden door. A small bar of oak slid across it, fitting neatly into lace. A breath of silence followed, and in that breath, the idea of safety was born. A door closed, a latch placed. From that moment, the world began to rest a little easier. The first locks were not of iron or brass, but of thought, of cleverness and care. They were wooden, simple, shaped by hand and instinct. In the warm lands of ancient Egypt, craftsmen carved them from cedar and acacia, fitting pins into hollowed chambers. The sound of the bolt sliding home was soft, like two stones brushing underwater. When it clicked, the heart eased. It was not power that the Egyptians sought in their locks, but peace. The knowledge that what was precious could remain still, untouched, through the long, golden hours of day. Farther east, in the valleys of Mesopotamia, protection took on another form. There, people pressed clay against cords and jars, sealing them with marks that bore their names. The seal hardened in the sun, and with it came assurance. The impression of a thumb, the curve of a signet. These were their keys, their guardians. Each seal was a whisper of identity, a promise that what was bound would remain so. When the clay broke, the sound was faint, a sigh of earth, an acknowledgement that trust had shifted hand. Time drifted onward, empires rose and softened. In the world of Rome, the lock found new voice, no longer wood, but metal, bright and deliberate. Iron bent into shape under the glow of forge fire, its form both function and beauty. The Roman locksmiths shaped their craft with elegance. Each key was slender, ornate, often worn as jewelry upon the wrist. The sound of metal meeting metal was clear and ringing, a tone of certainty, a signal that the unseen was now secured. It was music to the cautious heart. In the East, where dynasties unfolded like scrolls of silk, China breathed artistry into the idea of safety. Locks were not mere tools, they were sculptures of imagination. Small brass creatures guarded doors and chests, dragons whose tails formed keyholes, cranes whose wings lifted to reveal the hidden latch. To close such a lock was to invite quiet grace into one's dwelling. The sound it made was delicate, almost ceremonial. A chime at the edge of silence. Each lock seemed alive, watching, waiting, keeping gentle company through the night. Farther south, in the heat and mystery of ancient India, invention took on a different tone. There, locksmiths hid secrets within secrets, mechanisms so subtle that only patience could solve them. Some locks turned not once but twice, with hidden levers and shifting plates. Others disguised their keyholes within patterns of lotus and flame. The unlocking was an act of understanding, not force. Each turn of the key carried both intellect and trust. The sound, a soft click, barely there, was the breath of knowledge itself. Through the centuries, locks evolved as the mind of humankind did, always reaching, refining, seeking comfort in precision. The materials changed, but the desire remained the same. To create a pause between self and world, to build a boundary that promised stillness. Each culture added its own music, the dull thud of a wooden bar, the crisp tone of bronze teeth, the whisper of parchment seals torn open by dawn. And yet, even as craftsmanship grew and keys became symbols of power and intimacy, the essence of it all stayed simple. To lock something was to love it enough to wish it safe. A door was not closed in fear, but in care, a promise to the future that what mattered would endure the night. Imagine now, across millennia, the soundscape of security. A wooden latch slides home in the soft dark of an ancient hut. A clay seal hardens under sun. A Roman key turns with a clear, metallic sigh. A bronze animal of the East closes its mouth upon a secret. A hidden lock in India yields only to the patient hand. All these sounds, small, deliberate, tender, form the heartbeat of trust through time. From the deserts to the deltas, from mountains to harbors, humanity continued to shape this art of keeping. Locks grew smaller, more intricate, as homes grew closer together and lives more entwined. The idea of safety no longer belonged only to treasure or grain. It extended to memory, to privacy, to the soul's quiet need for peace. To turn a key became an act of closure and of release, a way of saying, here ends the day, here begins the rest. As centuries passed, metal gave way to mechanism, then to code, and now to the invisible hum of electricity. Locks today no longer always speak aloud, they whisper instead in signals and pulses, in flashes of green light and the soft click of circuits aligning. Yet even now, the gesture is the same. The hand reaches, the door closes, the world narrows to a moment of stillness. The sound is softer, but the feeling is eternal. From those ancient doors of wood to the tiny locks that guard our homes and dreams, the idea of safety has never changed. It lives not in the mechanism, but in the moment, that small pause of trust before the night. And so, the story of security ends as it began, with stillness, with care, with breath. A door closes once more. Somewhere, a lock turns softly. The air holds a delicate hush. And you, listening now, feel that quiet settle, the kind that comes when everything is finally in its place. Because safety, in the end, is not a wall nor a key, but a feeling. The slow exhale after the day's noise, the calm certainty that nothing will disturb the dreams to come. From the first latch of wood to the whisper of digital gates, the meaning remains. Peace begins in the closing of a door. Now the world is resting. The hinges no longer creak. The last light fades, and somewhere in the hush, a voice murmurs softly, almost like wind through a keyhole. The world is still now. Everything has been locked away. Only sleep remains, and it is opening